The dense forest stood like a dark sentinel, its towering trees blocking out most of the night sky. John hadn't expected this. He'd been in the wild many times before, and each time, the sounds of nature were his only company. But tonight, something was different. A strange unease gripped him as he trudged through the underbrush, the leaves beneath his boots whispering with each step. His mission was simple: survive, track, and collect data. It wasn't supposed to be anything more than that. But deep within the heart of the forest, a different kind of energy pulsed, an energy that seemed to feed off his very presence. It was almost as if the forest itself was alive, watching, waiting. A snap of twigs shattered the silence. John froze, his breath caught in his throat. He had no weapon, only the gear strapped to his back, but the feeling of being hunted was unmistakable. Every instinct in him screamed to run, but he stood his ground, his senses sharpened to a razor's edge. The night was cold, but the sweat running down his neck was warm. He adjusted his pack and reached for his flashlight, turning it on just enough to cut through the darkness. The beam illuminated the path ahead, but nothing seemed out of place. The forest was still. Too still. Suddenly, a sound from above. A rustling. The unmistakable sound of movement. Something, or someone, was up there, watching him. John's pulse quickened as his hand instinctively went to his knife. He was a trained survivalist, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Slowly, carefully, he raised his flashlight toward the tree branches overhead, his heart thumping in his chest. Then, the glow caught his eye. A light. Soft but undeniable, flickering like a star in the distance. For a moment, he stood there, staring at the strange glow. It was out of place, too warm, too inviting for the cold, alien wilderness he had come to know. He wasn't sure why, but the light felt like it was calling to him. A strange sense of calm washed over him, mixed with a creeping unease. It was as if his very survival depended on this moment, on what lay beyond that strange light. Without fully understanding why, he began to move toward it. Each step was deliberate, slow, the forest eerily silent around him. His breath came out in shallow gasps, the cold night air seeping through his jacket. It was then that he noticed something that made the pit of his stomach drop. The trail was different now. The familiar markings he'd been following were gone, replaced by fresh scratches and broken branches. The ground was disturbed, like something, or someone, had passed through here recently. John's instincts flared again, but now he had no choice but to press forward. The light was closer. With every step, the forest seemed to grow darker, the trees narrowing and closing in on him. The oppressive silence weighed heavily on his shoulders. John wasn't sure what he was looking for, but it didn't matter. The light was pulling him deeper, farther from the safety of the known, and into the unknown. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet seemed to shift, a faint tremor running through the earth. John's boots slipped on the soft, uneven ground, and before he could react, the earth gave way beneath him. He felt a sharp, searing pain in his chest as he tumbled forward, his body crashing through branches and leaves, down into the darkness below. He landed hard, his breath knocked out of him. For a moment, there was only silence, no sound, no movement. His head swam as he struggled to regain his bearings. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself to his knees. The flashlight had fallen to the ground, casting a weak, trembling light on his surroundings. The air here was thick, different. The walls of the pit seemed to close in on him, the earth damp and suffocating. John glanced around, his heart hammering in his chest. He had no idea where he was or how deep he had fallen. His pulse raced, his breath shallow as he staggered to his feet. There, in the distance, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, too tall, with a silhouette that seemed to stretch unnaturally against the dim light. For a moment, John froze. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching him. His instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs felt like lead. What was this thing? What was it doing here, in the heart of the wilderness? The figure stepped forward, its movement slow and deliberate. As it came closer, John could see it more clearly. It was humanoid, its skin a pale shade that seemed to blend with the shadows, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The thing didn't speak, didn't make a sound, but its presence was heavy, like the weight of an unspoken promise. Who are you? John managed to whisper, his voice cracking. The figure tilted its head slightly, studying him. Then, in a voice that was not quite human, it spoke. You shouldn't have come here. John's heart skipped a beat. The air seemed to grow colder, the shadows pressing in on him. This wasn't just a figure, it was a warning. A warning he hadn't heeded. And now, it seemed, he was too far into this mystery to turn back. The figure raised its hand, pointing toward the depths of the pit. In that moment, John knew that whatever lay ahead would not just change his life, it would change everything. John didn't respond. His body stood frozen, gripped by a primal fear that rooted him to the spot. The figure in front of him, tall, pale, and with eyes that flickered like dying embers, loomed over him, its presence suffocating the already heavy air. The only sound was the erratic beat of his heart in his chest, the silence around him so deep that it seemed to devour all else. You shouldn't have come here, the figure repeated, its voice a low, haunting whisper. It wasn't just the words that unsettled John, it was the way they felt, like a warning, a verdict. From some higher power, as if the earth itself had decided his fate. John swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. His survival instincts screamed at him to flee, but his legs refused to obey. He was trapped, alone in this godforsaken pit, with nothing but the figure before him and the eerie darkness closing in from all sides. What is this place? He managed to stammer, his throat dry. Who are you? The figure took a slow step forward, its movements fluid and deliberate. The glow in its eyes grew brighter, and for the first time, John could see the full extent of the creature. Its skin shimmered, like it was made of translucent stone, and its features were hauntingly alien. There was something almost ethereal about it, something not quite of this world. I am the Watcher, the figure said simply, as though the answer should have been obvious. And you are trespassing. John's mind raced. The Watcher? Trespassing? This wasn't supposed to be part of his mission. This was no ordinary survival trip. It had turned into something far worse, something beyond his understanding. But despite the terror coursing through him, he knew he had to ask. Why are you here? He whispered, his voice trembling. The figure's head tilted again, as though considering the question carefully. Then it spoke. Everything in this world has a purpose. A reason. The earth. The stars. The creatures that walk its surface. You are a part of a much greater design than you realize. And yet, you stumble forward, unaware of the forces you are awakening. John's stomach tightened, a cold sweat dripping down his back. The words hung in the air, thick with meaning, but still veiled in mystery. What did it mean? Awakening forces? He was just a man, just a simple man on a simple mission to track and collect data. I don't understand, he said, his voice breaking. I'm just here for the research. The Watcher's eyes glowed brighter, flickering like the dying embers of a fire, and for a moment, the entire pit seemed to pulse with energy. The creature's lips parted, and in that instant, John thought he saw something that resembled pity in its gaze. Everything you know is a lie, it said. The world you walk on, the life you cling to, it is all built on secrets that have been buried for centuries. And now, you have disturbed them. John's mind reeled. Disturbed them? What secrets? What was the Watcher talking about? This wasn't a research mission anymore, it was a nightmare. Suddenly, the air in the pit seemed to change. The pressure increased, the temperature dropping to a bone-chilling level. His breath fogged in front of him, his teeth chattering as he tried to make sense of it all. "What do you want from me?" John demanded, his voice rising. "What are you?" The Watcher stepped closer, its form casting an eerie shadow over him. For the briefest moment, John felt a flicker of hope, a strange sense of connection. Whatever this thing was, it didn't feel malevolent, at least not in the traditional sense. But what it was, and why it was here, remained beyond his comprehension. "I want nothing from you," the Watcher replied, its voice almost soothing now. "But you are not alone. Not anymore." John blinked, his mind struggling to keep up. "Not alone," he repeated, his heart pounding. "Yes," the Watcher said. "You are part of something much larger. You are caught in a web of events that spans across time and space. And now, you are bound to it." John's head swam. This didn't make sense. He was just a researcher, not a hero, not a chosen one. This had to be a mistake. Whatever this creature was, whatever this place was, it couldn't be real. It had to be a hallucination, a trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion and isolation. But deep down, he knew that wasn't the truth. He had fallen too far, descended too deep into this mystery to ignore it any longer. The Watcher reached out, its long fingers hovering inches from John's face. He flinched instinctively, but the creature's touch was light, almost tender. It didn't feel threatening. Instead, it felt like a warning, like the beginning of something that couldn't be undone. "There are forces at play here that you cannot yet comprehend," the Watcher said softly. "Your world is not as it seems. There are those who would destroy it to protect their own agendas. And now, you have entered the game." John felt the weight of the words crash down on him. He had no idea what the Watcher meant, but one thing was certain, his mission was no longer about survival. It was about something much larger, something far more dangerous. He wasn't just tracking animals or mapping data anymore. He was entangled in something dark, something ancient. "Why me?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Why was I chosen?" The Watcher's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, there was an almost imperceptible shift in the air. The creature's gaze intensified, as if it were peering directly into John's soul. "You were not chosen," the Watcher replied. "You were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time." A rush of cold air swept through the pit, and John stumbled backward, his heart racing. What did that mean? How could he escape this? How could he survive in a world so filled with danger and secrets he didn't understand? But before he could gather his thoughts, the Watcher turned away, its figure fading into the shadows. "Come," it said, its voice distant now. "You have much to learn." And just like that, the figure was gone. The air around him seemed to shift again, and John was left alone in the darkness. John stood motionless in the pit, the echo of the Watcher's departure still ringing in his ears. The darkness seemed to press in on him from every side, a cold weight that was more than just the absence of light. It was suffocating, heavy with the knowledge that he was no longer in control of his own fate. The Watcher had left him alone. But not alone, because something had changed in the air, in the world around him. He could feel it. The pit was eerily silent now, save for the occasional rustling of the wind and the faint drip of water from somewhere far above. But the silence was pregnant with meaning, filled with unspoken truths that John could almost reach out and touch. He had no idea how long he'd been there, minutes, hours, days. The passage of time seemed irrelevant now. All that mattered was the oppressive feeling of being watched, of being caught in a web he couldn't escape. John's mind raced as he tried to piece together everything that had happened. The Watcher's cryptic words, "You shouldn't have come here, there are forces at play here that you cannot comprehend, you are bound to it," replayed in his mind like a broken record. What did it all mean? And more importantly, why was he here? He was supposed to be conducting a simple survival study, gathering data, recording his experiences. But now he was at the mercy of forces far beyond his understanding. The forest had become a labyrinth of mystery, and he was at its center, a pawn in a game he didn't even know existed. A flash of movement in the distance caught his attention, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. His heart skipped a beat as he instinctively crouched down, his body alert and ready to react. But the movement wasn't another creature. It was a figure, another one. It wasn't the Watcher. This new figure was smaller, more human in shape, though still alien in its own right. The figure moved with a fluid grace, its steps silent against the soft earth. It wasn't looking at him, but John felt its presence as if it were a tangible force. His breath hitched as the figure neared, its form taking shape in the dim light. It was a woman. At least, John thought it was. She wore a long, flowing cloak that shimmered with strange, iridescent patterns. Her face was obscured by a hood, but even from a distance, John could feel an aura of power surrounding her. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, an energy so intense that it made his skin prickle. He had seen many people in his life, but no one like this. The figure stopped just a few feet away from him, her head tilting slightly as she regarded him. John's throat tightened, and for a moment, he didn't know whether to speak or remain silent. She was an enigma, an unknown that seemed to be just as much a part of the strange world he had found himself in as the Watcher. "You're here now," the woman said, her voice calm and measured, though it held an undertone of something ancient. "There's no turning back." John's heart raced. He couldn't deny it. There was a finality to her words, as if they held some unspoken truth about his future. His legs felt weak beneath him, but somehow, he managed to keep his balance. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Who are you?" The woman's gaze softened, and she took a slow step forward. Her cloak swirling around her like mist. "I am called Elora," she said. "And like you, I am bound to this place." John's mind spun. Bound to this place? What did that mean? He wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he just stood there, feeling the weight of her presence pressing down on him. Elora studied him carefully, her eyes hidden beneath the hood. "You are not the first," she said after a long pause. "Many have come before you. All seeking the same thing, answers. And each one has found something far more dangerous than they expected." John's pulse quickened. "Dangerous? What are you talking about?" Elora stepped closer, lowering her hood just enough for John to see her face. Her features were delicate, yet they held an undeniable strength. Her eyes, though, were what captivated him the most. They were a pale silver, almost reflective, as though they held the secrets of 1,000 lifetimes. It was impossible to look away. "The forces that govern this place are ancient," she explained. "They are older than you can possibly imagine. They are not of this world. And yet, they have been woven into the very fabric of everything you know." John tried to make sense of her words, but they were too much, too overwhelming. This wasn't a simple survival mission anymore, it was a quest for knowledge that came with a heavy cost. "So, what do I do now?" John asked, his voice trembling. "I don't even know where I am." Elora didn't answer immediately. She seemed to be weighing his question, as if deciding how much to reveal. Finally, she spoke. "Now, you learn," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You learn about the truth that has been hidden for so long. About the forces that have shaped your world, the ones who have kept their secrets buried deep." John's mind raced. The forces that shaped his world? This wasn't just about survival. It was about uncovering a hidden reality, a truth that had been concealed for centuries. "Do you know what it is?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The truth?" Elora nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "I know it," she said. "But the truth is not something that can be easily understood. It will change you. It will change everything." John felt a knot form in his stomach. He had already crossed a line he couldn't return from, but now he understood that the path ahead would be even more treacherous. The truth she spoke of was not something he could prepare for, not something he could control. It was something far bigger, far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. "There is no going back," Elora added softly. "Once you know, once you understand, there is no unknowing. You will be changed. And the world will never be the same again." John's head spun with the weight of her words. He had come here expecting nothing more than a simple mission. But now, he was caught in a web of secrets and mysteries, surrounded by forces he couldn't begin to comprehend. The pit, once a place of refuge, now felt like a tomb, a place where knowledge and danger intertwined, where survival was no longer just about staying alive but about facing the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. Elora's gaze softened, as though she could sense the turmoil within him. "You are strong," she said. "You have the courage to face what lies ahead. That is why you were chosen." John shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. "I wasn't chosen," he said. "I'm just a man. A researcher." Elora smiled faintly, but there was something knowing in her expression. "You are more than you realize, John. The truth is within you. You just have to find it." And with that, she turned and began to walk away, her cloak flowing behind her like a shadow. "Follow me," she called over her shoulder. "It's time to begin." John had never felt the weight of his journey more than he did in this moment. The world around him, once strange and alien, was now starting to feel like a distorted reflection of everything he knew, twisted and fragmented. The silence that surrounded him, once comforting in its stillness, now felt like a living thing, watching him, waiting for him to make his next move. He stood at the precipice of something unknown, something vast, something that reached out beyond the boundaries of his comprehension. The ground beneath him trembled slightly, and he felt an unsettling energy pulse through the very earth, as if the land itself was alive and aware of his presence. The journey had taken its toll. What had started as a simple mission of survival had transformed into an unraveling web of mysteries, secrets, and truths too dangerous to confront. John had learned things about the world, about himself, that he could never unlearn. The Watcher, Elora, and all the strange entities that seemed to be guiding his path had left him on the edge of revelation, but that revelation felt like a looming storm on the horizon, threatening to tear everything apart. He had seen things, done things, that no man was meant to experience. His hands, once steady and sure, now shook as he gripped the edge of the cliff, staring down into the abyss below. The wind howled in his ears, carrying with it whispers that he could almost make out, voices from the past, present, and future, swirling together in a cacophony of confusion. "Why did you bring me here?" John asked aloud, his voice breaking the silence. It was the question that had been gnawing at him for days, for weeks, ever since he had first encountered Elora and the Watcher. He had tried to make sense of it all, but the pieces didn't fit. The world he had known was not the world he had found himself in. And the truth? The truth was elusive, slipping further away the more he sought it. Behind him, a soft step echoed on the rocky ground. Elora. He didn't need to turn around to know it was her. The presence of the woman, so powerful, so unsettling, had become a constant companion. She had been with him every step of the way, offering cryptic words, pointing him in directions he couldn't yet understand. She had told him that he was destined for something, something that went beyond survival, beyond the simple quest for knowledge. "Because you are the key," Elora said, her voice soft but carrying the weight of centuries. She appeared behind him, her silhouette a shadow against the glow of the distant horizon. "You always have been." John's mind reeled. The key? What did she mean? He had always thought of himself as just a man, a researcher, nothing special. And yet, everything about this place, this strange, alien world, seemed to insist that he was more. But more what? What did that even mean? "I'm not a key," John muttered, turning to face her. His eyes were wild, his thoughts disjointed. I'm just a man. I'm lost. I don't know what any of this means anymore. Ellora's expression was unreadable. She stepped closer, her eyes glowing with an inner light, like a reflection of the stars themselves. You are more than you think. And in time, you will see the truth for what it is. But you must face it. You must confront the darkness that is coming. John shook his head, the weight of her words sinking deeper into his chest. Darkness. It was the word that had followed him since the beginning of his journey. The Watcher had spoken of it. Ellora had hinted at it. And now, it seemed, the darkness was finally catching up with him. What do you mean, face it? What is it? He asked, his voice trembling. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure whether to jump or turn back. Ellora didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out, her fingers brushing lightly against his arm, a gesture that felt oddly comforting. You have been given a gift, John. A gift of understanding. But with that gift comes great responsibility. You will have to choose what to do with it. John's mind was a whirlwind. A gift? Responsibility? He didn't feel like he had been given anything, only confusion, fear, and the gnawing sense that he was part of something far larger than he had ever imagined. The questions kept coming, tumbling over each other like an avalanche, but they all led to the same place, the truth. The truth that Ellora was offering him, the truth that he had been running from. The air around them seemed to hum with energy, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. You must open your eyes, Ellora said softly, her voice urgent now. You must see what is hidden. Before John could respond, a sound broke through the stillness. A distant rumble, low and menacing. The ground beneath him trembled again, this time with more force, sending a shiver through his spine. What is that? He asked, instinctively reaching for his gear. The darkness, Ellora replied, her voice filled with quiet dread. It's here. And it's coming for you. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. The darkness. It wasn't just a metaphor. It was real, and it was about to swallow him whole. John's heart raced as he turned to face the source of the sound. In the distance, the sky was darkening, the stars flickering like dying embers. The wind picked up, howling through the trees, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of something foul, something ancient. What is it? He repeated, his voice rising in panic. What's coming? Ellora's expression hardened. It's the force that lies at the heart of this world, she said. The force that created everything, and will destroy it all. The force you've been seeking, whether you knew it or not. John's thoughts spun. He had thought the darkness was a metaphor, a figure of speech. But now, standing here with Ellora, with the ground shaking beneath his feet, he realized that it was something much worse. Something far more dangerous. And it was coming for him. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing. What do I do? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. You must face it, Ellora said again, her voice unwavering. You must face the truth. You are the only one who can stop it. John turned away, his mind a storm of confusion and fear. How could he stop something like this? He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even a warrior. He was just a man, thrown into a world he didn't understand. But the time for doubt was over. The darkness was here. And he was the key. The wind howled across the barren landscape, its cold gusts pushing John further into the heart of the storm. He barely registered the chill seeping through his bones, his mind consumed by the task at hand. The darkness that had threatened him since the moment he set foot in this alien world was now tangible, an all-encompassing force that seemed to close in around him with each passing second. He could feel it, gnawing at the edges of his consciousness, creeping closer with every heartbeat. Ellora had disappeared into the shadows moments ago, leaving John alone on the precipice of the unknown. She had told him that he was the key, that the power to stop the approaching force lay within him. But he didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel like the one who could save anything, let alone an entire world. His pulse quickened as he moved forward, each step heavy with uncertainty. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to do, what he was capable of. Elora had said that he needed to confront the truth, to face the darkness head-on. But what did that even mean? What was he supposed to do with the knowledge that he was somehow at the center of this cosmic struggle? Was he truly the one who could stop it? Ahead, the landscape shifted. The familiar trees and rocky outcrops had given way to something darker, more foreboding. The earth beneath his feet trembled again, as if responding to the ominous presence drawing closer. The sky overhead was no longer the calm, distant expanse it had once been. It had turned into a swirling mass of black clouds. Roiling and twisting in unnatural patterns, the stars blinking out one by one as if they were being snuffed out by an invisible hand. John's breath caught in his throat. He had seen this before, the darkness. The force that Elora had spoken of. It was here now, no longer a distant threat but a very real, tangible presence, suffocating the very air he breathed. He could feel its weight pressing down on him, the sheer power of it threatening to crush him under its force. But he couldn't stop. He couldn't turn back now. He had come this far. The truth was within his grasp, and with it, the chance to save, or destroy, everything. The ground beneath him shook violently, sending him stumbling forward. He barely caught himself on a jagged rock, his hands stinging with the sudden impact. His mind was racing, he needed to find Elora, needed to understand what he was meant to do. But as he looked around, the world around him had changed. The landscape was no longer recognizable, and the path he had been following had disappeared. In the distance, he saw a figure standing amidst the chaos. At first, he thought it was Elora, but as he drew closer, he saw that it was someone else, someone darker. The figure was cloaked in shadows, its form barely visible against the swirling maelstrom of darkness. It stood tall, unmoving, as though it were waiting for him. John's heart skipped a beat. He knew who this was. "You," he breathed, his voice trembling. "You're the one who's been behind all of this." The figure stepped forward, and as it did, the shadows seemed to part, revealing its true form. It was humanoid, but its features were distorted, twisted in a way that made it seem both familiar and alien at the same time. Its skin was ashen, its eyes glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. And its smile, if it could even be called that, was filled with malice. "Yes," the figure said, its voice low and rasping. "I have been watching you, John. Watching you struggle, watching you try to understand. But now, it's time to face the truth." John's stomach twisted with fear, but he didn't back down. He wasn't going to let this creature, this force, win. He had come too far. He had seen too much. "What do you want from me?" John asked, his voice steady despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. "Why me?" The figure laughed, a sound that sent chills down his spine. "You have always been a part of this, John. From the moment you set foot in this world, you became a part of the game. And now, you will play your part." John clenched his fists, trying to push back the fear that was beginning to overtake him. "I'm not a pawn," he said, his voice firm. "I'm not part of your game." The figure's smile widened. "Oh, but you are. You always have been. You are the key, John. The key to everything. You have the power to either save this world, or destroy it." John's mind reeled. He didn't understand. How could he, a mere man, be the key to anything? He wasn't special. He wasn't a hero. He was just a researcher who had stumbled into something far beyond his understanding. "No," he said, shaking his head. "I can't be. I don't have that kind of power." The figure took a step forward, its eyes glowing brighter. "That's where you're wrong. You've always had it. But it's not just power, John. It's something much deeper. It's the truth. John took a step back, his heart racing. What truth? What are you talking about? The truth of this world, the figure said, its voice growing colder. The truth of everything. The force that created this place, created you. The force that lies at the very heart of the universe. And you, John, are tied to it. You always have been. John's breath caught in his throat as he felt the weight of the figure's words. He didn't understand. He couldn't understand. But there was something deep inside him, a feeling, a knowing, that told him the figure wasn't lying. He was the key. He was bound to something greater than himself, something that had been hidden from him for his entire life. The darkness around them grew thicker, more oppressive. The ground beneath John's feet began to crack, as if the very earth was being torn apart by the force that was coming. He could feel it, whatever it was closing in on him. You have two choices, John, the figure said, its voice now a whisper. You can accept your fate, accept the power that lies within you, and save this world. Or you can refuse it, and watch it all burn. John's mind raced. He had always been a man of logic, of reason. But this wasn't about logic. This was about something far deeper, something he couldn't explain, but something he could feel. The power inside him. The truth. He didn't know how he knew, but in that moment, he understood. The key wasn't just about power, it was about choice. The choice to confront the darkness, to face it and embrace the truth. Or to turn away, to let it consume everything. The figure's form flickered, its features twisting in the shifting shadows. Time is running out, John, it said, its voice now a hiss. The darkness will consume you. The choice is yours. John's mind cleared. He had made his decision. He wasn't going to let the darkness win. He wasn't going to let it take everything he had fought for. I choose to fight, he said, his voice steady. I choose to face the truth. And with that, the darkness erupted.